Is it legal to homeschool? How can I homeschool without breaking the law? This is a message that I receive several times every month, asking about the legality behind homeschool. And the short answer is yes. Homeschooling is legal in all 50 states, although the requirements do differ, and in many countries around the world. Most places I have found that there is some way to homeschool, although some places this is very easy to do, and other places there are some hoops to jump through. But on this video, I want to talk a bit more about the journey that homeschool has taken and what education has looked like throughout the years. I think it's important to know the history behind what we're doing. So if that interests you, stick around. Welcome to my Familia Homeschool. On this channel, I love talking about all things homeschool, all things mom life. So if that interests you, make sure to stick around. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about the legality behind homeschool, but also the history of homeschool. There have been some really important people that have fought for our right to homeschool. And I think this is really important for us as homeschoolers to have some basic knowledge about. It hasn't always been so easy, and we haven't always been so free. So let's dig in. For about 6,000 years of history, parents were the ones primarily responsible for teaching and educating their children. Formal education or formal lessons of any type were reserved basically for the richest or most influential families. Government-run schooling is generally a pretty new concept. In the United States in 1840, people began talking about laws that required families to send their children to school. The first laws surrounding this were passed in 1852, and in 1918, Mississippi became the last state that required compulsory education. Once these laws were passed, families that didn't send their children to school were criminalized for truancy and absenteeism. So basically, you were a criminal if you didn't send your child to these government-run schools. In 1925, the Catholic Church went to court to be able to open a school outside of the public government-run school system. When this law was passed, we now had two different categories of education, public school and private school. Between 1979 and 1983, James Dobson had Dr. Raymond Moore on his radio show to talk about childhood development. He encouraged parents to keep their children at home and let them develop before sending them to formal school. He quickly began to advocate for home education because he saw such great success in families who chose this way of life. Now, this was revolutionary because, get this, it was still against the law. But because of this radio show, thousands of families began pulling their kids from school, or never sending them in the first place. This was met with legal opposition and with truancy officers. These families could get their children taken away because they were breaking the law by not sending them to school. A lot of these families lived in daily fear. They couldn't go out to the park at 9 a.m. like we do nowadays. They couldn't go grocery shopping after finishing their schoolwork by 12 p.m. They had to hide inside their house during school hours, and a lot of these families even had escape routes planned for their kids in case social services showed up on their doorstep. In 1983, Michael Paris and Michael Smith began HSLDA. HSLDA is a legal organization that fights for homeschool rights. They began working with many other state organizations to create laws that would exempt homeschooling families from compulsory attendance laws. And through this work, we now have three categories of education: public school, private school, and homeschool. During the 70s and 80s, when all of this was happening, homeschooling was virtually unheard of. And probably a big part of that is because homeschoolers couldn't really create that community with other families. They really were revolutionaries. But because of all these people that have gone before us, because of all these people that have fought for our right to choose the way that we want to educate our children, we are now able to live in this freedom. Homeschooling is now super mainstream. We all know someone who homeschools, and well, most of us around here already homeschool, and we're able to enjoy this beautiful freedom that we can educate our children in the way that is right for them and us as a family. Legal requirements vary a lot from state to state. There is no one federal rule, so it's up to the states to decide what the legal requirements will be for each one. In some states, you're totally free to do whatever you want. Other states require a yearly report. Some require standardized testing. Others have requirements for the hours and the subjects that they must teach their kids. If you don't know what the requirements are for homeschooling where you live, my one recommendation is to check out the HSLDA website. They have a page for every state in the United States and most countries. Any country that I've looked up, they also have a page on what homeschooling looks like there. So check out that page to find real trustworthy information about what homeschooling looks like where you live. My other recommendation is to find other families that are already homeschooling where you live. This is super helpful and a great way to gain advice from families who have already walked the steps before you. These families are also a great source of information about resources and communities and activities that would be great for your family. So I hope you enjoyed this run through of homeschool history. I think it's really important as families that we're informed of the path, of the journey that homeschool has taken before us. It really helps us to be grateful for the blessing that we have to be able to choose to homeschool. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can join us in the future with My Familia Homeschool.